Well, hello! It's time for another exciting episode of Pens in Use. This is the show where I talk about the fountain pens and inks that I've been using throughout the week. So, let's dive into it. If videos like this interest you, where I talk about fountain pens both new and old and at all price points, I would invite you to subscribe. And, couple diverse topics I'm going to bring up at the end of this video, so I suppose one thing I'm looking for is maybe you can answer the questions out there about private reserve inks. So let's dive into the pens. The pens that I have out this week, I have a Matador 992, I have a Platinum 3776 with a shoji finish, I have a I have a Parker Sonnet, I have a Parker Duofold, I have a Pelikan M800, and these three have something special in common that you'll see in a bit. A Waterman Carene, which was in line to be washed out. I just wanted to write with it some more, so I pulled it out and refilled it with the same ink. Aurora 88, Reform 1745, Pilot Custom 823, and a Lamy 2000. As has become the new custom, I will be recording my writing samples in this cognitive surplus notebook. And, in case you're wondering, this week's Pens in Use is actually authentic. We're done with the fake ones because now I'm caught up. I've had a few comments the last 2 weeks. Like I said, one of those was a fake episode, but anyway, a few comments saying that they really like this paper in this cognitive surplus notebook, and I agree. Not the best paper I've ever used, but very good fountain pen paper, and very enjoyable notebooks, and they look good on your shelf after you fill them up, so kind of fun. So my first pen this week is this Matador 992. It's a German pen from the 1930s. You can see, well, at least I can see, I don't know if it's showing up for you, there's a little bit of fading with the ebonite on the cap versus the barrel. But a lot of, is that guilloche? Anyway, a lot of detail in this pen, which is impressive. A little bit of nibbling by a previous owner. And it's an extra fine, which I don't believe. Could be a different nib. And when I first saw this nib, I thought, yep, it's different, but it's the M for Matador. Just a really nice pen. Just enough bounce to be fun. The ink in it is Birmingham pens. Waterfront Dusk. I don't know if this is a thing right now, but the Birmingham pens kind of ran out of all of their inks, and then they've been slowly getting them back. But one of the things I've been noticing with their newer inks is they seem to be simplifying the names. One of the complaints I had with them before is I just could not keep the names of the inks in my head. And they have simplified them. You're going to see another one here in a minute, but let me just show you real quick what I mean. So, I had to get up and get the inks. So this first bottle I'm going to show you is one of my all-time favorites of theirs. So it's Birmingham Pens, Cathedral of Learning, Panther Blue. So it was fascinating to learn about a place like Cathedral of Learning. I definitely, if I get to Pittsburgh, I want to see that. Then it gives a little history. You know, these are people who are very proud of their city. But that's a lot to keep in your head, especially if you don't have any association with their city. So now I have here a newer bottle that will be showing up in a minute. Birmingham Pens Twilight. And then on the side they give some information. I used to live in fact, I graduated high school in a little town in Pennsylvania called Coudersport, and the Allegheny River runs through Coudersport. And so this ink name meant a bit to me, but originally, the original name of the ink was Allegheny River Twilight. And again, if you don't know it, you're just kind of like, oh, I don't remember all that. So I think it's kind of nice that they have simplified the names. So, personal opinion, but kudos to them. It makes the marketing easier, and, when we're trying to remember what's your favorite ink? Oh, that river one? I don't know. So, all right, oops, I should actually show you the pen here. So my next pen is not a Birmingham pen. It's a Platinum pen. This is a Platinum 3776. This is the first Platinum 3776 I ever bought. If you look at the links in the video description, you're going to see I didn't have too many nice things to say about it. So it's kind of amazing that I have so many of this model that I do now. But I do, because I like it now. It just kind of grew on me like fungus. My criticisms would still be there, most of them, but maybe more muted. I like the nib. I like the feedback. I like the looks a lot. So the coarse nib emptied out. And so I put this ink into this pen, again, to continue using it to address envelopes. I think at some point, I can't remember the day, but I will be putting this ink in my fine nib Platinum 3776, but it's currently on a hiatus because... Okay, so I'm sorry, I thought I was forgetting something, but I'm not. It's currently on a hiatus because I am doing a long-term experiment to test this fancy slip and seal mechanism. And they say it'll last 2 years, so I am testing it. I've got the date written down somewhere. I know it's not till spring, so I'm not worried about it right now. But yeah, it'll be something I'll be doing. My next pen is a Parker Sonnet. Very nice model of pen. A little smaller than I expected when I first got it, but I find it perfectly usable. And thanks to a fellow YouTuber, who I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention, who gave me these samples, but a fellow YouTuber gave me some samples of Parker Quink ink, and this was one of them. This is Parker Quink Red. So Parker used to have a wider selection of colors. Now they're down to 3. Seems to be the fashion with a lot of pen makers to have more and more inks. Aurora, not too long ago, expanded their lineup to 3 inks, and then all of a sudden they've got a whole bunch. Parker seems to be retiring colors, so this is when they retired. And I'll admit this, there's nothing special about this red. It just does nothing for me. And I've had that discussion, on Fountain Pen Network and those kind of places. They love every so often to help build up a big drama about, oh, do you use red ink? Who cares? Use it, don't use it. It's not something I make a big deal about either way. My next pen is a Parker Duofold Centennial. I was asked about how this compares in size to, and it's a Centennial, there is an international version which is smaller, but I was asked how it compares in size to the Pelikan M800. So a little bigger, the Pelikan's a little bigger when they're capped. Uncapped, the Duofold is a teeny bit longer. I think the Duofold has a slightly slimmer section. And the nibs, I don't know, maybe the Pelikan nib is a hair longer, a little bit fatter. And you'll see how the writing compares for both of them in just a minute. So my Parker Duofold, fine nib on it. And this, again, thanks to that fellow YouTuber, is Parker Quink Brown. It's an okay brown, I guess. But, if it's brown, it's kind of nice if it actually looks brown. This brown is almost black. In fact, if I didn't tell myself it was brown, I'd probably believe it was black ink. And then my final ink of the Parker that he sent me was the green. This sample of green is different from the type of green. Is it over here? Oh, just out of reach. Anyway, it's a little bit different type of green from the green that I typically use. I have a bottle of discontinued Parker Quink green, but this is a different shade. And if I'd been thinking, I probably would have inked up a pen with that also, but I wasn't. I will try to remember to do that for next week. If I'm pretty sure this will still be inked up next week. Ooh, can't quite fit it all in one line because it's a broad nib. So, this isn't an apples to apples comparison between the Duofold and the Pelikan, because the Pelikan has a broad nib, a little bit of a stub-like character. The Duofold is a fine nib. I don't know, I almost prefer the Duofold. Can I say that? How dare you like Parker? Alright, then we get to my Waterman Carene, my nice sailboat pen. Mine is an amber finish. I put a broad nib on it. It's one of those fun inlaid nibs. And I just simply, it had run out of ink and it was sitting to be cleaned, and I thought, no, I want to write with it some more, so inked it back up without cleaning it. Which is totally okay. You can ink pens up over and over and over with most inks. I won't say every single ink you can do that, but most inks, that's the whole idea. Maybe you clean out your pen once a year or something. Or never, as the case may be. But in this day of a plethora of ink colors and owning more than one or two pens, we tend to clean them a lot more than we used to. And as I've mentioned before, beautiful fall colors. We get fall here in North Dakota. It's short, but it's nothing like the falls I grew up with in Pennsylvania when you had these forested hillsides. All right, now I have the Aurora 88, the vintage version. We've had, for the last few weeks, well, maybe not last week, but we've had the modern Aurora 88 that I spent quite a lot more money for. This is just a fun little nib here. Oh, and it flexes very well. And this one is Birmingham pens. Twilight. And as much as I loved the evocative name of Allegheny River Twilight, like I said, I think it makes more sense to have a simpler name because it's easier to remember. You know, the word Twilight is still evocative. And it's evocative to more people than Allegheny River Twilight. And it's a nice color. And again, paper is performing pretty well. Mostly I'm getting this bleed through on these wet patches. My next pen is a Reform 1745. I'm surprised it's still inked up, but then I think about it and I realize, well, yeah, I've had a lot of fun pens inked up lately. So this one's just kind of been shuffled to the side. You know, it has a very nice ink in it that I like. Can be a little bit light. This is Rohrer and Klingner, Helianthus. Fix my L there. You know, I love yellow ink, but it's almost useless. Like Private Reserve Buttercup, which, by the way, I feel like I just read something about Private Reserve, the new owner dying. I was going to put a link about it, then I forgot all about it till just this moment. So since I'm now filming the talkie part and this part separately, I will try to research that and put that into my little talk at the end. Okay, here we have my new Pilot Custom 823 with a broad nib. And I'm still thinking about doing some kind of experiment where I soak different plastics in that disinfectant. So this is a broad nib, and the ink in it is Pilot Blue. And I have to say, it is an okay looking ink in this broad nib. You know, when I bought my first 823, the one that had the horrible plastic incident, I did not care for this blue. But in this broad, I don't know if it's the same exact color, but in this broader nib, it just seems to bring out more character in it. Some inks just work very well in a fine nib pen. Others just kind of, All right, my last pen, which normally would have been inked up a bunch of times, but hasn't been because it's been here, my Lamy 2000. But in another week or two, I should have a lot more free time. So, well, relatively speaking, it is the school year after all. So it should start running out. Make sure I'm actually still on screen. There we go. So weirdly enough, the pen that's been used a lot is a Pelikan Stola, which when I did its original review, I said, well, you know, it's a nice pen, but it doesn't do anything for me one way or the other. But I've been using it very heavily at school and ink it up just about once a week. Pelikan 4001, brilliant black. So the ink is getting used, just not as much in this pen. And it needs to be used because I have, you know, a liter of the stuff to use up. So, yeah, I've got way too much ink, and even if I didn't have a liter of this stuff, I still have way too much ink. So those are the pens and inks that I've been using this week. I'm going to, like I said, film the talkie part separately, and I will try to look up how to, I will try that again. I will try to look up the information on Private Reserve inks so that I can have the complete story for you. So those are the pens and inks that I've been using this week. I included a link. I figured out where it was. I'd actually heard that Private Reserve, the new owner, had died. It was on Fountain Pen Network. Apparently, Jaffa is trying to buy the name. It's unclear because there's just not a lot of sources I could find information whether Jaffa is trying to buy the ink formulations or just the name of the company. Because that would be two very different things. You buy Private Reserve the name, and you can market the pens under or the inks under the name, but they may have a different formulation. So I don't know. Private Reserve isn't a brand I use a lot. I have a few of their bottles. I had a few of their older bottles grow weird slimy things, and one had floating gray fur. So I've been nervous about buying more, but I do understand quality control had improved at that brand. And yeah, they do have some interesting colors. I like their Tanzanite. I like their Buttercup. I've got, what was it, Shoreline Gold is one I like. Avocado is a really nice green. So they have some nice colors, so I'll be curious to see what happens there. And maybe you know more. It looked like, the original owner, the founder of the company, had died. And I remember that because I was still doing the Goulet Pens used to do this, was it Ink Flight, ink something, where they'd send, 5 ink samples a month to you. And the month that he died, they sent out a lot more than that, kind of in tribute to him. It was a worker from the company that took it over, but now she has passed on, so yeah, it just seems to be up in the air. So it's mostly rumor with one link in the Fountain Pen Network. So, if you know something, feel free to chime in. I'm curious. In news that would only be exciting to you if you're a pen person, I mentioned at the beginning of the school year, that I'd taken 5 pens to school to just use there. And I thought I would, diversify my pen usage more. But it turned out my usage at school got limited to 2 pens. My Pelikan Stola 3, which is my daily writer. It's full of the black ink. And then I kept grabbing the Aurora Style. And the other day I grabbed the Aurora Style and it was empty. So then I switched to another pen that also turned out to be empty, the Jinhao something or other. And so yeah, I got the Aurora and the Jinhao here at home to be cleaned out. I'll take the Aurora back, but it's been interesting, to realize that, yeah, when I'm doing business type writing, I really only want 2 colors. So yeah, don't know what to say about that. COVID-19 still continues to assail North Dakota. We, as a state, just cannot get our act together. And there are a lot of people who honestly believe that the whole virus is a hoax. Masks are a hoax. Masks are an attempt to control people and all that. And, our state has been starting to do these advertisements about masks, but it's like, yeah, too little too late. That we've had too much inconsistent messaging, and I don't blame just the state of North Dakota for that, because I think our governor has been pretty good on the messaging with masks, just maybe not so much the other parts. I'm still teaching in person, but we've had some sports teams isolated at home, quarantined because of contact with the virus. Who wouldn't? And it was interesting, there was a school board meeting about it where they decided nothing. But one of the people at the meeting brought up that, well, all these contacts all happened through sports. And it's true. Are school sports something worth continuing during this? Luckily, I don't have to make those decisions, and I know what would happen to the people who would decide to discontinue them, so I'm just a teacher and do what I'm told. And then there's some interesting things going on at state level about mask mandates and quarantines, and do we make it a misdemeanor if you don't quarantine, or do we not make it a misdemeanor? And oh, by the way, our chief medical officer of the state, our third one since the pandemic, has resigned. I know our governor put on a good show of stability and people liked his weekly talks, but the cracks are starting to show. And the lousy results the state has gotten with COVID are showing too. And part of it is the rural thing. Your cities, I know we have a president who likes to say that it's a blue state problem. The reason the blue states got the COVID-19 first is they're high population centers and they're places that lots of people go to. So of course they got it first. Now it's spread out into a lot of the more rural red states, and frankly, it's spreading out to our rural counties in the rural states. We're up to 14 cases of the virus right now in my county of 3,000 people. It's going up. And we knew that was going to happen, and we had time to prepare, and yet we didn't. So that's where North Dakota is right now. So if you're in a state that's starting to see the other side of it, or a country, good. It is coming back in other countries, and what's frustrating is you're starting to see also some of the craziness we saw in the United States being exported to other countries over masks and just basic safety precautions with this pandemic. And there are some people I've just come to the conclusion that you cannot reach. You can throw facts at them all day and just whoosh, whoosh, one ear out the other. An interesting thing I found on the COVID topic, one of the major, trying to read the name of the article here. One of the major genetic risk factors for severe COVID-19 is actually inherited from Neanderthals. And then I found, while I was looking that up in the same journal, both of them in Nature, while I was there, I saw that Neanderthal liaisons, and this was an article from 2 years ago, bestowed virus-fighting genes on humans. Fun fact, most humans are 2 to 3% Neanderthal, thanks to inbreeding back when we still had other species of human on the planet. And those genetic traits are carried with us to this day. And then the other thing I put up, it's actually a video, and it's from a YouTube channel that's usually political, but I didn't put it up for political reasons. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on air, but many, many years ago, so we're talking, well, not 2 decades ago, but close to 2 decades ago, I lost my grandfather to a stroke. He had time. He was luckily, he died a few days afterwards, but he was in a Kmart when the stroke happened, so medical care was not far away. Kmart in a big city, and 20 years ago there were more Kmarts than there are now. But anyway, he had the stroke there, and strokes are scary because it's part of your brain dying. And the reason I put this link there, it's Ron Paul, who's one of our more interesting political figures here in the United States, was doing a broadcast with somebody else and had a stroke while on air. And it is horrifying to watch it happen. And I know it can so easily be used to make fun of him. The reason I put it up there, and I think the reason that this YouTube channel decided to share it, I think it's good to see what somebody having a stroke looks like. Because I honestly got chills watching that thing. Watching his speech suddenly become slurred and garbled to the point it's nonsense. I just think it's important that we all know what a stroke looks like. And it's also a good reminder, if there's nobody around, I don't think Ron Paul, from the way his face looked, I don't think he knew anything was wrong. Fortunately, the other guy that was there was able to deal with it and get him help. But, imagine you're at home, or, imagine me filming this, because it can happen when you're young. Also, it's just less common. And I'm filming this, and my speech is getting garbled, and I don't know, because I filmed these beforehand. And who's going to help me? Nobody. So, it's a short amount of window of opportunity you have to save somebody who's having a stroke. And, we have seen some deaths recently. What was his name? Michael Brooks died of a cerebral hemorrhage. He was younger than me. He was, 38? Just a random thing that happened in his brain. It can happen to anybody. So, anyway, I wanted to close with that so you would... just because it was something I felt was important. And it just seemed like too much of a downer to lead into the rest of my admittedly limited conversation. I just don't have a lot of brilliant things to say this week. It was one of those weekends where I didn't get a lot of free time. I will say I have not been sleeping in the mask this week. The air has cleared up. The sky is blue again. I can still... I think you can hear it in my voice. There is still a little smoke around, but not the you wake up in the middle of the night coughing and hacking type of smoke. So, that's been nice to get a proper sleep without having to wear the mask, because honestly, it is uncomfortable to wear. So I'm glad I don't have to anymore. Other than, when I'm all day when I'm teaching, of course I wear a mask. So my home is my refuge. So anyway, not a lot of topics this week, but that's okay. I usually tick somebody off when I bring up topics anyway. So I want to thank you for watching. And if videos like this interest you, where I talk about fountain pens, both new and old, and at all price points, I would invite you to subscribe. And I'll just ask again, if you know anything about the situation at Private Reserve, I'm sure a lot of viewers would be interested to know. And if you see somebody whose speech is becoming slurred, or part of their face is drooping, or they're just one side of their body is off, something's wrong. And as the advertisement once said, time lost is brain lost. So anyway, I want to thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.